Hello everyone, my name is David Oni, and my YouTube channel is David Oni Wiz, WIZ. You can simply subscribe to this channel on the YouTube David Oni Wiz. You can simply subscribe to this channel, David Oni Wiz, on YouTube. You can subscribe to our channel, leave your comment, and also press the notification button so that when we come with more interesting videos on academic teachings, you can be able to benefit from it. So today we're going to look at something different from where we stopped last time, because we did what we call structure and organization of government. Last time we discussed on the legislative arm of government. We defined the legislative arm of government, and we also stated their functions. So today we're going to look at what we call the executive arm of government, as earlier promised. So today we're looking at government, and we're looking at structure and organization, organization of government, structure and organization of government, and we are looking at what we call the executive arm of government, the executive arm of government, the executive arm of government. Last time we said that the legislative arm of government is responsible for rule making, is responsible for the making of a law in a country. So today we're going to look at the executive arm of government. What do we mean by the executive arm? And what are the functions of the executive arm of a government? And also the types of a executive. So today, we're looking at the executive arm, and what is the meaning of a executive arm of government? So we say executive arm of government is can be defined as the arm of government vested with the responsibility of rule execution, formulation, execution, formulation, and implementation. Implementation. Now, let us quickly look at this definition. We said that the executive arm of government can be defined as the arm of government vested with the responsibility of execution, rule execution, formulation, and implementation. So what we're saying here is that the executive arm of government is the body that is responsible for the implementation, for the formulation, and also the execution of government policies. So government makes policies every time, and these policies that are being made are always implemented by the executive arm of a government. So the rules that are made by the legislative arm of government is implemented by the executive arm of government. And that's why we said that the executive arm of government is responsible for rule execution, formulation, and implementation. So the rules and regulations or the laws that are made by the legislative arm of government is implemented by the executive arm of a government. Now, the head of the executive can be a president or a prime minister, depending on the system of government being operated in a country. So, the system of government being operated in a country will determine who is going to be the head of the executive, whether a presidential system of government or a parliamentary or a parliamentary or cabinet or Westminster system of government. So if you're talking about cabinet system of government, parliamentary system of government, or Westminster system of government, you're talking about the same thing, which is cabinet system of government. Now let us quickly look at what we call types of executive. 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 So the one we have what we call single or presidential executive. Then number two, we have dual or parliamentary or cabinet executive. Then we have number three, collegiate, collegiate executive, collegiate executive, collegiate executive. So these are the three types of executive that we have. We have the single or presidential executive, the dual or parliamentary or cabinet executive, and the collegiate executive. So let us quickly look at them one after the other. So what do we mean by the single executive? When you're talking about a single executive is also the same thing as a presidential system of government. A single executive is also the same thing as a presidential system of government. And what do we mean by a presidential system of government? If you're talking about a presidential system of government, you are talking about a system of government where one individual is both the head of state and the head of government. Where one individual is both the head of state and the head of government. So one individual is head of state and head of government. Head of state and the head of government. So that's what we mean by a single or a presidential executive. So under a single or presidential executive, one individual is both the head of state and the head of government. In other words, it performs both what we call ceremonial and executive functions. Ceremonial as the head of state and executive as the head of government. So in other words, the cabinet ministers that are selected by the president are not members of the parliament. They are not members of the parliament. So the members of the parliament are not members of the cabinet ministers. There is what we call individual responsibility, not collective responsibility. Individual responsibility, as opposed to what we call collective responsibility. So number two is what we call the dual or parliamentary or cabinet executive. So the dual or parliamentary or cabinet executive is talking about a cabinet system of government or a parliamentary system of government or a Westminster system of government. And what do we mean by that? If you're talking about a dual executive, we are talking about a system of government where the head of state is different from the head of government. The head of state can be the queen or the monarch or the king, while the head of government is the prime minister. The head of government is the prime minister. The head of the government is the prime minister. So members of the cabinet are also members of the parliament. Members of the cabinet are also members of the parliament. So in other words, there's what we call collective responsibility. Collective responsibility under what we call the dual or parliamentary or cabinet executive. Now the third one is what we call collegiate executive. When you talk about a collegiate executive, you're talking about a system where you have some members of a council where they rotate the chairmanship of the leadership of the party, of the council among themselves. So that's what we mean by a collegiate system. Again, when you're talking about a collegiate system, you are talking about a council that is duly constituted by members of that council and in which the leadership or the head of the government is rotated what among the members of that council. So in such a system, we are talking about what we call the collegiate executive, and this system was practiced in what under Olympio in Togo, under Olympio in Togo. That is the Republic of Togo. But the collegiate executive is not a popular system of government, and that is why in most countries the system is not adopted. So these are the three types of what executives that we have: single presidential executive, dual parliamentary cabinet executive, or the collegiate executive. So now let us look at the functions of the executive. The functions of the executive. Functions of the executive. Functions of the executive. Functions of the executive. So we look at what we call the functions of the executive. Functions of the executive. Functions of the executive. Now, when you talk about the functions of the executive, we're going to enumerate them one after the other now. So, number one, preparation of the budget. Preparation of the budget. Number two, maintenance of law and order. Number three, defense of the country. Number four, formulation of foreign policy. Formulation of foreign policy. Number five, appointment of judges. Appointment of judges. Another one, dissolution of parliament. Dissolution of parliament. Another one, representation of the country in international organization. So let us quickly look at the preparation of the budget. So number one, it is the function of the executive to prepare the country's budget. So the preparation of the country's budget is done by the executive arm of government. Then what we call the number two is what we call maintenance of law and order. It is the responsibility of the executive arm of government to maintain law and order in the country. Then number three is the defense of the country. The executive arm of government has the duty of protecting the country against external attack or internal insurrection. So that's the function of the executive. Then formulation of foreign policy. So then we can say another one, appointment of ambassadors. Appointment of ambassadors. Appointment of ambassadors or countries representatives. So formulation of let us go to back to this one. Formulation of foreign policy. It is the duty of the executive arm of government to formulate what we call foreign policy. In time past, Nigeria foreign policy has been Africa as the centerpiece of Nigerian foreign policy. That's one of our foreign policy. Africa as the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy. So that's it. So the formulation of foreign policy is the function of the executive arm of government. The appointment of what? Of judges. We are talking about the appointment of the Chief Justice of the Federation and other justices in the system. They are appointed by the executive arm of government, subjected to the ratification and approval of what we call the legislative arm of government. Then the dissolution of the parliament. The executive also has the responsibility of dissoluting the parliament when the parliament has expired its term. So it is the duty of what of the head of the executive to dissolve the parliament, most especially under what we call the parliamentary system of government. The representation of the country in international organizations, then the duty of what of the head of the executive, the president or the prime minister is to represent the country in international organizations like the United Nations organizations and also other international organizations which the country has a membership. So it represents them what in such a organization. Then the last one is what we call appointment of ambassadors or countries representatives. It is the duty of the executive to appoint the country's representatives, such as ambassadors, to other countries. So it is the duty of the executive, subjected to the approval of what or the ratification of the legislative arm of government. So the duties of the executive arm of government are numerous, but because of our time, these are the few ones we're looking at for today. So now we talk about what we call the preparation of the budget. Number two, maintenance of law and order. Number three, defense of the country. Number four, formulation of foreign policy. Number five, appointment of judges. Number six, dissolution of parliament. Number seven, representation of the country in international organizations. And number eight, appointment of ambassadors or countries representatives. So these are more are the functions of the executive arm of government. So we want to use me this. We're going to stop at this medium, and we want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is David Onewis. Subscribe to this channel, leave your comment behind, and also tell us on how to serve you better. And also, click on the notification button so that when we have other videos, you can always be one of the first person to have access to these videos. Till we meet next time, thank you for watching and God bless. Thank you. Bye bye.